Hi, how's it? So, when I first started gardening, coriander was definitely on the list for me to start growing. But I struggled a lot keeping it alive, and I think I finally managed to figure out why it kept dying and what to do about it. So if you guys have been struggling with coriander, keep watching the video, and hopefully this can be of use. Okay, so I really enjoy cooking. At the end of 2023, I really started getting into using fresh herbs for my cooking, mostly as garnishes, but also started getting into like pasta sauces and all that sort of stuff. So normally what we did is we would go to the store, buy some basil, rocket, coriander, whatever we wanted, and then we'd utilize it, but then in like a week it would pretty much go snotty and be unusable. So that was a bummer. And that happened more often than not, to be honest. I don't think I've ever actually finished a herb pack. So what happened is, wanting to have access to fresh herbs whenever I wanted and a variety of fresh herbs, I thought to myself, well, if we're going to continue buying them from the store and they're going to go snotty, why don't we just have the plants themselves? Because then I can have them all the time. So that's what we did. We went to a nursery, we bought some plants. It was coriander, basil, and parsley, flat leaf parsley. We purchased the plants, brought them back home, and we pretty much took it from there. We had a few harvests, which was quite nice. Not much, but it was lekker. The basil and the parsley, man, they produced, they were sharpies, bro. I didn't have any issues with it. But the coriander continued to die. For some reason, I could not keep coriander alive. When I bought them as seedlings from nurseries in 6 cells, when I bought them as slightly more mature plants from nurseries, and I'd like just have them in small pots, they died. They died in the kitchen, they died on the stoop, they died brewed pretty much anywhere. Eventually got to a point where I thought, okay, well, if this is going to happen, why don't we just put the stuff in the garden and actually have like a little herb garden? And that was a pretty lack idea. So that's what I intended to do. Not having any garden beds or anything, I knew I needed somewhere to plant them. So that little squash patch back there that I showed you guys in the gem squash video, that's where everything began. It was ground zero. So I cleaned up that whole bed, took out all the grass, all the weeds, all that, put a whole bunch of scraps in there because I wasn't going to spend money on compost. I mean, I didn't know I was actually going to enjoy it as a hobby. I just wanted a herb garden. So I put a whole bunch of scraps in there, and in those scraps that I buried, there were butternut seeds and gem squash seeds, and they were pretty happy in the conditions that they were in. They eventually germinated, sprouted, came up, and I thought to myself, well, brew, I mean, I might as well leave them here. This was pretty exciting. I didn't know what was going on, but I wasn't going to take them out. They were happy. So I left them. At that point, then I started really playing around with the idea of growing more produce. So we went and bought some tomatoes, some bell peppers, and a few other things. That's pretty much where the gardening journey began. But I still wanted herbs. That was the whole reason I took on this whole endeavor. Then I created these beds here. Then I started planting the basil here. I started planting the parsley back there. And the parsley overwintered, by the way, which was amazing. I didn't think that would happen. But the coriander, no matter what I did, it just did not like it. Really? It did not like my backyard. They didn't like the kitchen. They didn't like the stoop. They didn't like the garden. They didn't like the sun. They didn't like the shade. They didn't like water. They didn't not like water. They just did not like me. I don't know. So I just could not keep the coriander alive. So I eventually gave up on it. And then in 2024, sort of like at the beginning of last year, mid last year, I really started getting into making Indian curries. And the recipes that I was looking at mostly, or more times than not, had coriander seeds in it, dried coriander. Not the leaves, so the actual seeds. And coincidentally, at the same time, brew, at a stroke of my unluck, I could not find coriander seeds anymore. For some reason, brew, so that was a bit difficult. And the problem is, using the ground spice, you can't really toast it without burning it. Yeah, you can put it in the pan and toast it that way along with the food, but I mean, like, if you're trying to make a a spice to use for other stuff, then it can be a bit of a problem. So throughout winter, I started thinking to myself, well, this is a bit of an issue. I like fresh coriander and I like the seeds, but I can't seem to get the seeds and the actual herb that goes snotty very quickly, and the plants just do not want to survive. So eventually I came to the conclusion saying, you know what, dude, let me try this again. So at the start of the current season, the end of September, I thought, okay, well, let me give this a bash again. There's one thing that I haven't tried with coriander, is direct sow. Everything has been transplants up to this point. So that's what I did. We bought some coriander seeds with the intention to direct sow them. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm glad. I chaos sowed them here, right? So I chaos sowed a whole bunch here, a whole bunch there. I even chaos sowed some, a bunch here. It was a little bit of an experiment, I'm not gonna lie. And then I also chaos sowed a whole bunch here. So in terms of sun requirements, the thinking was, well, I was going to, so first of all, I multi-sowed all of the bunches because I wasn't sure what was going to take, if it was going to take. And then I wanted to experiment with different positions in terms of sun. So at the Lape, that gets about 5 hours of sun, morning sun, afternoon shade. This area gets about 7 hours of sun. It's pretty much morning sun with like a little bit of afternoon sun, like all the way at the beginning, but then it gets shaded out by sort of like 2-3 o'clock. These two bunches here, man, they were very happy in this position with the sun and everything. All of it took, all of it. I don't think any of the seeds that I planted did not take. I mean, this has been such a fantastic production exercise. So I was able to get multiple harvests of fresh leaves from both of these bunches, and eventually they've bolted and they've gone to seed. I've already harvested seeds from them twice, so I'm busy drying them out right now, right? I still need to pick them off and bathe them and see what I'm gonna get. But I estimate between both of these plants, with the final maturity, I should have enough seeds for quite a few curries. And I'm still busy germinating some more now with the intention to try and transplant, because with all the transplants that I got from the nurseries, they didn't survive, so I want to see if it's a transplant issue or not. And while harvesting some of these seeds here already, I've allowed some of the seeds to drop, not pick them up, and I've just basically fluffed them back into the soil to almost perennialize these plants. So with the seeds that I'm getting now, I have seeds in here that I'm expecting to germinate within the next 2 weeks, and then I'll keep this going. I'll get some more fresh leaves, I'll get some more seed, which is really nice. But what is interesting to note is, out of these two plants, or all the multi sowings that I've done, they actually need, in my hot South African climate, 5 hours of sun is fine for them. They really want more morning sun than afternoon sun. In terms of water, yeah, I wouldn't say they're thirsty or anything, but they definitely want to be kept nice and moist. They do take a lot of heat stress, especially in the afternoon. You want to keep it nice and moist. But I've gotten sufficient amount of leaves and seeds from these two plants, which is really cool. So pretty much my findings are, morning sun is really cool. They want about 5 hours of sun. They'll be happy with that. Keep the soil nice and moist, and they'll be happy. Now you'll see they actually grow quite lanky. I thought they would bush out more, but they're actually growing a little bit lanky, and you can see with the weight of them, and obviously with the water now with the rain, a little bit heavy, but even without that they flop over. So if you can support them somehow, I think that's really going to be beneficial. So right now I just have a single stake with a cross member out here. I think that bell pepper ring that I showed you guys in the last video, I think that'll actually work very nicely for this, but you'll sort of want it to be nice and high. And yeah, one thing though, with harvesting and multi-seeding, I'm going to next time, I'm going to plant them in a row instead of these massive clumps, because now some of the seeds that germinated before some of the others, or should I say matured first and went to seed first, dried out first, and then I had some laggers. What happened is to harvest everything sufficiently, you have to separate it, which is a bit of a headache if it's all very close together. So if you have these like slightly smaller bunches than this, right now it's like a bunch in about a 200 mil diameter. So if you have like 100 mil diameter bunches next to each other, pam, 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 and it's very easy to then succession plant those bunches. It's very easy to then harvest the entire bunch instead of picking out, okay, it's this stem is dry, this stem is dry, this stem is dry. It's a little bit of a headache, to be honest. So give them a little bit of support, sow them in a row in these like slightly smaller bunches, and I think that's really the way to go. So a few interesting notes. Even after these plants had bolted and not started going to seed yet, but after that started bolting and the flowers had already formed, I could still use the leaves as fresh coriander. But I will say this, the leaves transform a little bit. They become very small and stringy and a little bit difficult to harvest. They're also not as pungent as when they are still the nice broad flat leaves when they're young, but they can still be used in a pinch, which I found quite interesting. What I also did is, and this is something I've never seen in a store, I don't see anyone talking about it, funnily enough, you can dry out these leaves. I mean, you get dried rosemary, you get dried basil, you get dried parsley, you get dried oregano. Dude, you get dried fish, bro. But I've never seen dry coriander leaves. So I dried my coriander leaves and it worked. It's quite cool. Obviously as a garnishing, it doesn't look as sexy as some nice fresh green leaves. But in a pinch, and you just want a little bit of freshness on your curry or something else, or like on your tacos, or just like a bit of chili, it actually works. But also, just like once it's bolted, it's not as pungent, it's not as citrusy, but it can still be used. And I think there's a few interesting applications that we can use this for as well. Think like coriander bread. Put in a little bit of bread with some butter, maybe some chili flakes. I think that'll be an interesting flavor profile. So there's things that we can experiment with this sort of knowledge. I've never seen it in the store. I've never seen people talk about it. So it's something that I want to explore a little bit more. Okay, so just to bring this ramble a bit to the close. I've had better success with direct sow, morning sun, afternoon shade, multi-sow the areas. If you really want, which is what I did, chaos sowed, koi seeds, even anywhere really. Just see where it's going to take in your garden. I found I had a lot of failures with transplants. I'm germinating some now in 6 cells to see if it's actually a transplant issue or just something that I can't seem to get right with nursery seedlings. I don't know if coriander is like a bit of a wuss when it comes to the roots and it's a little bit sensitive. So I want to explore that a little bit. And yeah, give it a little bit support because it does get a little bit lanky. It'll also make harvesting the seeds themselves a little bit easier. Otherwise, yeah, coriander is very versatile. You can have fresh leaves, you can have dried seeds, and you can have dried leaves. Yeah, so very cool plant. I've had a lot of struggle with this, dude, and we've also got a very hot, dry climate. So if there's anybody out there as well that's been struggling with this, I recommend maybe chaos of them. Put seeds everywhere in your garden. Sun, no sun, give them water, don't give them water. Just experiment something that I've had a lot of trial and error with, and you might have the same sort of scenario. So put them everywhere, see what's going to happen. I struggled a lot with seedlings, so yeah, I don't know if it's sensitive roots or something. So if you enjoy listening to me ramble on about some plants and garden stuff, you might want to check out some of my other videos in the playlist. Thank you.